Good afternoon. Welcome to the next webinar in our continuing series from MBF Bioscience. My name is Jose Maldonado. As a staff scientist for MBF Bioscience, I have the opportunity to work closely with many of our customers, and a recurring theme among you has been the need to manage large amounts of imaging data between multiple workstations, multiple colleagues, and even multiple institutions. Today we'll be introducing a new product, Biolucida Cloud, to address just that need. I'm joined today by Jeff Blaisdell, software engineer and project leader for Biolucida Cloud.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for taking the time out of your day to be here.
The webinar will last approximately 60 minutes and is divided into these main topics. We will have an overview of the Biolucida Cloud, a description of how we use Biolucida Cloud for viewing images and managing images, as well as speaking on application integration with other MBF Bioscience products, like Neurolucida, Stereo Investigator, Microlucida, and as well as third-party software. The goal for today's webinar is to provide a practical demonstration of using the Biolucida Cloud image management system. All right, Jeff, take us through the major one here. What is Biolucida Cloud?
Well, at its core, it's essentially about image management. And by management, I mean the ability to view, organize, share, tag, and search image data. The easiest way to actually explain it is to describe one of the problems we're trying to address with Biolucida. Now, on the left of your screen right now is a simple graphic, and that's meant to depict the situation where software such as Stereo Investigator, Neurolucida, Microlucida are interacting with image files on one system. You capture image data. That data is then saved on the same computer, and then you open it back up and work on it. An example of this would be when a researcher, say, captures a 3D virtual tissue on a workstation, and then they open that image right back up and start working.
Right, so you're talking about I'm sitting in front of my microscope and computer, I acquire an image, and now that image is saved on my local C drive, and now I'm going to work with that.
Exactly. Now let's expand on that example a little bit. Jose, let's say it was you who created the 3D virtual tissue.
Okay.
The lab that you're working in actually has multiple workstations. You have the original system that you actually captured the image on, and you have one or more other workstations where you guys do analyses like cell tracing, cell counting, or stereology probes.
And that's a pretty typical situation.
Now, let's say that you need to open up the image that you just captured on the capture system on one of the other workstations because you need to free it up so someone else could use it.
Yeah.
How do you think you might move that image?
I mean, frankly, probably the easiest thing would be to set up file sharing on the capture system so that I could just move it through the network. But this is going to totally depend on whether the network administrator will even let me do that with the capture computer. If it's a core facility, I probably won't have those kinds of privileges, and I won't be able to actually create a shared folder. I mean, I guess it's possible. At the end of the day, I probably would just grab a USB stick and move things that way.
And that's perfectly logical. Well, let's say that you were capturing multiple virtual tissues at a time, and each one of those images was multiple gigabytes in size.
Sure. No, I see what you're getting at. That would, I think, very quickly become tedious with image files of that size, especially if I had to move between several workstations on any given day, which again is totally possible.
Yeah, and I think it would be tedious also, but it's not even just about storing large image files and moving those around. Even small files can be tedious to manage. Let's say instead of doing virtual tissue captures, you were performing an SRS image stack acquire, and you had maybe 40 or 50 stacks for each tissue specimen that you had. How quickly do you think you could find something you had captured 2 weeks ago?
It depends on how organized my lab notebook is, I guess.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right, well, let's instead say, that someone else had captured the images then, and they've left the lab, maybe moved on to a new postdoc,
Sure.
And now you've taken over the project, and it's your job to go through their data and find things.
Yeah, and actually I've been in a similar situation before, and I know that having to search through directories of someone else's files to find what you're looking for is painful. Now, I've been able to work with Biolucida Cloud for some time now, and these are problems that Biolucida Cloud is really, really good at solving. It's with the click of a button, one or more images can be uploaded, categorized, and then accessed from any network computer, including over the web. Jeff, let's take a closer look at the components that make up Biolucida Cloud, shall we?
No problem. Now, the graphic that you see right now on your screen, that depicts the layout of a Biolucida system and the various ways that a client computer can connect. And the upper left-hand side is the client of the graphic, and that's the situation we described earlier where software such as Stereo Investigator, Neurolucida, Microlucida, and in this case Biolucida Viewer are all interacting with image files stored on that local computer, on that local hard drive. The difference here, however, is the connection to the network, and that's shown in the middle, and over to the right you see Biolucida Cloud. Now, Biolucida Cloud runs on either Linux or Windows Server, and it's comprised of a PHP web application, a C++ image server, and databases of cataloged images. It can be accessed directly from all MBF Science software or from any standard web browser as depicted in the lower left. Mm-hmm. And when I say web browser, I just mean Chrome, Safari, Firefox, Internet Explorer, something like that.
Sure. So, Jeff, okay, thanks. That's a pretty good explanation of the layout of Biolucida Cloud. But now let's jump right on into the next section, which is going to be viewing images. So Biolucida Viewer is an installable application. It's available for both Windows and Mac OS X. It allows complete access to all of the features of Biolucida Cloud. And the easiest way to understand this is by using it. So, Jeff, let's go ahead and go to a live stream and you can demonstrate its use for us, yeah?
Yeah, sounds good. Let me minimize this. Until that comes up. Okay, so this is the default view that you see when you start up the viewer. It's configurable, but right now this is the one that we're showing. The first thing that we're going to do is connect to Biolucida Cloud. Now, we already have this viewer configured to connect, so what we're going to do is click on this world icon right here. And right now we just connected to Biolucida Cloud. Now what you're looking at is an embedded web browser, and it behaves exactly as you'd expect a web browser to. The rows and columns of images are thumbnails of images that are stored on Biolucida Cloud. Now in a later section we'll go on to discuss more about collections and exactly what they are. So if you hear us mentioning collections, don't feel like we haven't described it. We're going to be getting to that in a little bit. Okay. But for now, let's just open up a few images here. So I'm going to click on this image. Now, as you saw, left-clicking an image in the viewer will open up that corresponding image. Now, notice that the image that opened up, it opened up in what we call a tabbed view. So we have a tab here of the original browser we were looking at, and another tab for the image we just opened. And we can actually go, let's open up a few more images to give you a better idea here.
So Jeff, this looks just like when I do tabbed browsing in like Safari or Internet Explorer or something.
Exactly. So each one of these tabs is its own, you're interacting with it independently, and by clicking back and forth, you'll be, viewing just that one particular image.
Sure.
Now, as you notice, when we open up an image, there are a number of new icons that show up. So let's just take a look at a couple of these now. The first one I wanted to show you is this one here, which is the download icon. If you have the rights to do it, and we'll talk more about permissions and rights in a little while, but if you have the rights to download an image, you can actually download the entire image from the cloud to your local computer if for some reason that's necessary. And you do that just by clicking on the download icon.
Okay.
Another one that we have here is the macro view button.
Yeah, and anyone familiar with either Neurolucida or Stereo Investigator will already know that this gives you a bird's eye view of images. And just like in those programs, this window is also a docking window. So you can detach it from the main window and place it wherever you'd like, right?
Exactly. So as you can see, we'll just show the docking and redocking here, just as you'd expect one of those to do. Now, the macro view, as we're showing here, can obviously also be used to navigate around images. So why don't we just take a few minutes here and show people how exactly you might navigate around an image.
Sure.
So the first thing we're going to look at is zooming. And there are actually 3 different ways that you can zoom on an image.
Jeff, now, when you say zooming here, you're referring to changing the magnification of the current image plane, right? You're always on the same focal plane, and we're not talking about going from one focal plane down to another.
Exactly. So if you were looking at a stack here, you would not be focusing through the stack. You'll just be zooming in and out of a single focal plane, akin to changing a lens on a microscope.
Sure, you're basically just going from 10x to 20x.
Yep, exactly. Now, so let's take a look at zooming. One of the ways to do it, up at the top here, you see a number of lens icons. And to zoom, you can simply click on one of those lens icons. And what that does is it immediately takes you to that magnification. Now, I just want to mention, while we're talking about these lens icons, these are actually dynamically generated. And it's done so such that the one that you see on the right is the magnification that that image was captured at.
Okay.
So for this image, it was captured at 20x.
I see.
Whereas for another image, you might see it captured at, say, 40x.
So the image was generated at 20x, and then the software generates these other kind of like virtual objectives so that I can look at this image at 10x and 20x, or I can't actually, 10x,
Exactly.
5x, 2.5x.
Exactly. So, and those are specific to each image itself.
Sure. Okay.
So that's one way that you can use zoom around an image. Another really simple way is just in the upper right hand side we have a couple icons for with a negative and a positive. And that just allows you to click on that and zoom out. You know, a single click will basically change your view once in either direction, and that's a really simple way to zoom in and out.
Gotcha.
The third way, and the way I actually use most often, is using the mouse wheel, and this is using something which we call zoom to point. And hopefully this will be easily demonstratable for everyone who's watching today. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the mouse wheel, and I'm going to zoom in and out. And if you notice that zooming, if you can see where the pointer is for the mouse, I'm actually zooming to exactly that point. So to better show this, in the upper right hand side you can see this little blue region. What I'm going to do is I'm going to move the blue region basically up into the upper right hand corner. And now as we zoom in here, your view is going to change, but that region will stay in the exact same place.
Right.
So as you can see on your screen now, we're zooming in, that's never changing. If I zoom out with that there, it will stay in the exact same place, and that works no matter where you are on the image.
Right. And Jeff, I have to jump in here and just mention how useful I find zoom to point to be. It lets you zoom into whatever region I'm interested in looking at, and I don't have to pan around after zooming. It just focuses in on where the mouse cursor is. In fact, I have to say that even while the magnification icons are great when you want to move to specific magnification, say I want to look at this at exactly 5x, zooming is so fast in Biolucida Viewer that I'll often just use zoom to point by default. I think it's a fantastic tool, and I think that once our users get their hands on it, they'll really agree. So, Jeff, you've demonstrated zooming in the viewer, but before we get back to demoing how we navigate around images, I want to make a quick point that relates to zooming at different magnifications that really became apparent to me when using this. And one of the great benefits of using captured images as compared to performing an analysis directly on a tissue sample is the ability to quickly change the magnification by zooming. The speed at which you can change a physical objective and refocus on the tissue sample just can't be compared to how quickly you can just zoom in and out of a captured image and just look at it at whatever magnification you wish.
That's a really good point, actually. Thanks a lot, Jose. So as we said, we've so far shown 3 different ways that you can zoom in the viewer. Let's just quickly show the other 2, panning and focusing. So for panning, it's really straightforward. Anyone who's used Neurolucida or Stereo Investigator knows this method. If you click anywhere in the macro view, you will automatically zoom to that region. And if you keep an eye on the macro view, you can see a little tiny box, which is the region that we're currently looking at. So that's one method that you can pan around. The other method is just simply using the arrow keys. So right now I'm actually using the left and right and up and down arrow keys. And I'm not sure how quickly this will get transmitted across, but it's a very fast pan as you go across the image. And that's another simple way that you can actually navigate. And now, while we're navigating on this image, I wanted you to notice the lower right-hand corner. There's a small status bar text here, and it may be too small for you to see. But what it says right now is 5.1 megabytes. And what that is the amount of image data that we've streamed so far for this image since we opened it up. So this isn't a local image that we have on the computer. This is an image that we're streaming from the cloud right now.
Sure.
Now this image itself is a 2D virtual slide. So it's about 30,000 pixels wide by 30,000 pixels tall. We're calibrating it around, we're navigating around pretty quickly for it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Compare this to, say, a standard single image capture. Most cameras capture are between 1 and 2,000 pixels in dimension. Compared to that,
yeah, this is huge.
This is a much larger image.
Yeah.
And I also, about the data we were talking about that streams down, I want to make another point in that all of the data as it comes down is cached.
Okay.
So if you go to a region on an image, you download a portion of that data. It is actually cached on the local system. So if you were to come back, say, 2 weeks from now, open the same image up, if you happen to go to the same regions, you'll have instant access to that data and nothing will be downloaded.
Sure, it doesn't have to take any time downloading that again.
Exactly.
Great, sure.
So that's navigating when you consider panning and zooming. Let's just quickly show you focusing. Now I'm going to close these images here. None of these are stack images, so let's find a stack that we can open up. I think this one's a stack. Let me zoom in here. And if you notice over on the far right hand side now, there's a slider that shows up. And it may be difficult. It's actually a transparent slider so that you can actually see a lot of the image behind it. But to focus, you can simply grab onto that slider, and you can see it moving down on the right-hand side of your screen. And to use that, you can just easily and quickly focus up and down in that image.
So Jeff, as opposed to what we saw before, this slider is actually moving us up and down through the image planes, right?
Exactly. And we can do the same thing using the page up and page down keys. So you can use this, hold the slider, or you can hold page up and page down, and now we're focusing through this image.
Jeff, this is three-dimensional virtual tissue, correct?
Yes, it is. This one actually, Mike Fay actually captured this here at MBF using an apotome.
It's beautiful. How big is this image?
This one is 15,000 by 11,000 pixels, and it's 10 focal planes deep. And the file size for this image is about 1 gigabyte.
Right, okay, so this is a good example of what we were talking about at the beginning of the webinar with respect to not wanting to move large image files around between multiple systems.
Exactly. Mike captured this image, uploaded it to Biolucida, and now we can easily see it from any computer in the building right now.
Awesome.
Here, let me open up another image here. This time we're going to look at a bright field image. Okay, so this image here is a 3D virtual tissue, just like the one we were looking at before. So we can do everything we were doing before. You can zoom in on it at any point. You have a focal slider that's over on the side here, and we can use this to focus up and down just like we had before. The only real difference here is the size of this image. So this image itself is 120,000 pixels wide by 80,000 pixels tall. It's actually 40 focal planes deep. So we have basically 40 giant images all in one file itself.
Right.
Now the total file size for this is just over 50 gigabytes. And as you can see, we can still navigate and pan around just as efficiently as the other images that we were looking at.
That's really impressive considering the size of this file.
Exactly. And while we're talking about focusing on this image, it's a good time actually to mention one of the other features that we have that relates to focusing. So if you notice now, I'm using the slider, I'm dragging it up and down. That actually loads things on demand. So if you were to use the slider and drag it past the current plane that you were on, you can actually move quickly to the bottom and you won't load any of the earlier planes.
I see.
You'll just go down to that bottom one. So the slider really allows you to move quickly from one area to another.
Okay.
The other feature that we have, if you look up at the top, there's an icon that says Load Stack Region.
Yeah.
And by clicking this, if you look down in the lower right-hand corner, what it's doing is it's loading every one of the image planes.
I see. Okay.
And that will continue until it gets to the bottom of the stack, or if you want, you can stop it at any time by turning off the slider.
So Jeff, I think it's important to point out here that what you're doing is essentially creating an ad hoc image stack. The file that you're looking at is one large file, right? A virtual tissue in 3 dimensions. It's no longer a bunch of individual stacks. So you're going to a location that you've chosen a field of view in, and now you're going to kind of create like a core as if you were digging through ice and get all those layers out and create one image stack, right?
Exactly. So we have a really large file here. We went to just the region that we were interested in. We hit Load Stack Region, and what that allowed us to do is we can now focus up and down at the full resolution for that region. It's not for the entire image, just for the region that you're interested in.
And that's so fast. Now, you said this was a 50 gigabyte file, right?
It's 50 gigabytes, but bear in mind that that's 50 gigabytes compressed, and that's compressed at 20 to 1.
Wait,
so uncompressed, we have about 1,000 gigabytes, or
that's a terabyte.
Yeah, a terabyte of uncompressed image data for this one single image file.
No, that's a huge file. But now you've been moving around that image and focusing through the stack. It's been going pretty quick. There's no way we've downloaded a terabyte, much less even 50 gigs, right?
No, exactly. You only ever stream data that corresponds to the regions that you're interested in. Now, right now, there could be other users that are looking at this exact image right now, but they could be streaming totally different regions of that image. And this image is actually a really good example of what we were talking about earlier. When you need to move image files from one workstation to another, you're not going to take a 50 gigabyte file and move it on a thumb drive.
Absolutely.
You're certainly, if you need to share it with someone across the country, you're going to have to
mail a hard drive. And
what this allows you to do is you have a giant file, but you only actually ever look at small parts of that, or small resolutions of everything that's there.
Sure.
So this allows you to really, limit the amount of data that you're looking at.
And I mean, realistically, even when I'm sitting at the microscope and looking at my tissue, I'm not going to go in and look at every last square micron of tissue.
Exactly. So you have it available to you just as if this was a real tissue.
Sure, as needed. So obviously when dealing with images of this size, moving files from system to system is just completely out of the question. This is a really good demonstration of how Biolucida Cloud is the perfect solution for this problem of extremely large volumes of image data. So Jeff, at this point, you've taken us over the basics of how to navigate around the Biolucida viewer. Let's look at a few more features that are available in that viewer, shall we?
No problem. So we have one feature, it's a really handy feature, which we call bookmarks. So if you look at the top here, we have a bookmark icon. And by clicking on this, we now have a new window that pops up over on the right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, let me just get rid of a couple of these older ones that we had. So looking at this, we have two tabs that pops up, bookmarks and recent.
Okay.
The recent list here is a list of all images that you've opened up. So at any point in time, this list will be updated with new images as you open them. You can click on, the image we had opened earlier, and it will automatically open that same image back up. And we can do that for all those. Now the other tab is in my opinion, much more interesting, and that's the Bookmarks tab. And
Okay.
what that allows you to do is go to any region that you're interested in, any magnification, any focal plane,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can hit this little plus down in the lower corner. That pops up this little bookmark at the top if you see it.
Yeah.
You can enter in a name, let's just call it my bookmark. Not very original. And now that we have that bookmark, we can be anywhere else in the image, and now we're on a different plane, a different magnification. We double click on the bookmark,
Right.
and it immediately takes us back to where we created the bookmark from.
That's so cool. And when you first showed me this, I immediately thought of an application where I felt this would have been very useful. I can imagine a situation where you have an offsite colleague generating virtual tissue, uploading it up to Biolucida Viewer. Now, one of my lab mates can sit at a workstation in our lab and load this up. And let's say I could tell them to go through and survey the entire hippocampus and find cells of a specific morphology. If this was 3D virtual tissue, the student could go through, audit the hippocampus, place bookmarks where they found cells of a specific morphology, and then the PI or the graduate advisor can sit down with the student later and just have this list of where all those cells were. That would be akin to having a real piece of tissue with markers or flags where the cells are at.
Exactly, right? Exactly. And I want to just quickly demonstrate with that. I had the image open before when I had double-clicked the bookmark, but those bookmarks are persistent. So
right.
If you come back a week later and you go back to the same bookmark and you open it up, it takes you exactly back to where you were in X, Y, and Z.
So I could have worked on this last week and called that set of bookmarks or that bookmark apoptotic dentate gyrus cells. I don't even have to have that image open. I just click on the bookmark, the image opens up, and then it takes me to where that cell was at.
Exactly.
That's awesome. So Jeff, now you've brought up this really beautiful multi-channel image. The first thing that comes to mind here is image adjustments. Is there anything that we can do here, like brightness and contrast, to adjust the image?
Yeah, we have sort of the standard image adjustments that you might expect. One of the icons up here looks like 3 little sliders, and if you click on that, on the right you'll see a dialog pop up, and what that shows is all the channels that you have in that image, and this supports any number of channels. This could be a 6-channel image if you had it.
Sure.
You can turn each of those channels on and off as you see fit. Remember, this is a virtual slide. We can still navigate, and those changes are persisted as you go to each new region.
I see.
We also support, if you have one of your channels selected or all of them when they're enabled, you can adjust the brightness for your channels. You can change contrast, and of course you can change the gamma.
So, okay, I guess the next thing that comes to mind is once you have something like this, I might want to grab screenshots of, let's say, all 3 channels independently or all of them together. Can I do that here? Can I just grab a screenshot of what I'm looking at?
Yeah, exactly. You can get it looking exactly the way you look. Turn channels on and off, change brightness however you want.
Sure.
And then there's an icon up here with a little camera.
Yeah.
And you just click on the camera icon. And you get a save dialog where you just need to enter in your file name, choose the type of file you want to save it as, and you can save that snapshot.
Very cool. Jeff, something just came to mind. I had a customer recently who requested a specific kind of situation that I thought Biolucida Cloud had a nice solution for. And the situation was that this investigator had different genotypes and different age points, okay? And they had virtual tissue of representative brain sections. Okay, so let's say they had 4 pieces of tissue, and what they wanted to do was kind of meander scan and move around each piece of tissue simultaneously. So if I start with the hippocampus, you know, the most lateral aspect of the hippocampus on image 1,
Yep.
and I move to the right, I want to move to the right on all my images. And now I saw you do something like that previously. Can you show us how that gets done?
Yeah, exactly. So let me close down those images. We're going to go up in the upper left-hand corner to slide.
Okay.
And if you go down to slide, we have a layouts option. Now, if you can see in the layouts option, the top option is tabs, and that's what we've been using so far, where every image you open opens up as its own tab. Mm-hmm. We also have single, 2, 3, and 4 image views, which are, you know, comparison views. So let's select the 4 image view. You notice that once we do that, our browser tab, which was previously in a tab, now is a dockable window. Mm-hmm. So we can use that to open up our images. Let's click on some images. I think I have some good ones down here we can compare. All right, so I'm going to open up a few of these images that we can compare.
Yeah.
So as you see, as we're opening these images up, they open up in sort of a multi-image view.
Right.
And right now we have it set to 4, so it will allow us to open up 4 images.
Gotcha.
If it were set to 2, we'd just open 2, and it would replace older ones.
Okay.
So let me close that down. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to zoom into full magnification on all of these. I'm not going to worry about trying to compare any.
Yeah, don't worry about the anatomy on this. I want people to see, because this was just such a cool feature.
Perfect. So these are all captured at 2x, so I'm just going to move to 2x on all of them.
Okay.
So now we have these images. If you want to synchronize them, there's a little lock that shows up on each of these images. We can click synchronize on any number of them that we want.
Right.
And after that, once you move one of those images, the other image will also move. And that works, you know, no matter which of the synchronized images you're on.
That's so great, because now I can go across my tissue in a very organized fashion and kind of be able to have both on both images the same region of anatomy and compare it. Now, I remember you can lock all 4 of the screens, right?
Yep. So that was just the bottom 2 we locked. Up at the top, we have the ability. You can actually lock. There's a quick button that you can lock all of them and unlock all of them as you see fit. And once you do that, any navigations that you do on all 4 will move. So if you do a pan, that will move all of them equally. If you do a focus, that will be the same, or a zoom, that will be the same.
Right.
Obviously, we can't focus these because they're not stack issues.
Sure.
Stack images.
I think, Jeff, this is one of the really handy features of Biolucida Cloud. Great. So let's move on now to the next section of our webinar, image management. Images are organized into collections and displayed as thumbnails in Biolucida's main workspace. The workspace is where you'll start working with your images when logging into Biolucida, and from here you can search, organize, and view any of the images. Let's switch back to a live screen so that Jeff can demonstrate some of Biolucida's image management features and functions. And Jeff, I think let's start by looking at how you can manage large collections of images and how you can organize them into useful categorizations.
Okay. Not a problem. To demo this, we're actually going to use the Chrome web browser. You can use any web browser you like, but we'll demo it in Chrome. So let's just log in. And, you know, you could do these similar things in the viewer, but we want to show people multiple ways to do these.
Right.
So I'm going to log in as myself. Okay, I'm logged in. The images that you're looking at on screen right now are basically what's called a home page. As you saw in the viewer, for the most part, when you're actually browsing your images, you don't normally see that. But you can set this up to be anything that you want. You can, you know, choose any images that you want to put there. Okay. Let's just move right to the Browse tab.
Okay.
Now, as you can see, we're looking at thumbnails, as we said earlier, of images that are stored on Biolucida Cloud. Now, these thumbnails, if it's a non-stack image, it's just going to be a thumbnail, obviously, of the only plane you have. If it's a stack image, the thumbnail will be either a min or max projection, depending on the type of image it is.
Okay.
Let me change the size of these a bit so you can see. You could choose either small, medium, or large images. And we basically do that so that you can get a better view of the images independent of the screen.
Sure, I could use this on any different kinds of computers, and different computers have different resolutions.
Exactly. So as we had said, each of these images belongs to a collection.
And now, Jeff, let's just take a moment and define what you mean by a collection.
Essentially, collections are arbitrary grouping of images, really.
Okay, and I can decide what to make it, right? So I can decide that I can have a collection that's purely my transgenic mouse pictures and another collection that's purely my control mouse pictures. Or I could even say this collection is all fluorescent images, this collection is all bright field images.
Exactly. You can organize them as anything that you like.
Okay.
Now, collections themselves are actually part of a larger hierarchy of institutions, lab, and user.
Mm-hmm.
Now, a single user belongs to one lab, which is part of an institution, as you'd expect.
Sure.
And that user can make any number of collections.
Okay.
Let's take a look at the collections that I have access to in order to better illustrate this. Now, to see the list of collections, we click on the double arrow, which is shown in the upper left. And you probably noticed me doing this in the viewer earlier. So I'm going to click on that double arrow, and that's going to open up a window which lists our collections. So as you can see here at the top, we have the Smith Lab. I'm a member of that, and below me you see a number of collections. So all of this list below here are collections that I've previously created.
Okay.
Now I can click on each one of these, and as you see, the thumbnails that you see change. So by choosing these different collections, I'm changing the thumbnails that are displayed because I'm looking at the images.
Yeah, so it makes, when you click on that collection name, it makes that the active visible collection in your workspace.
Exactly. Now, why don't we let's just demonstrate how I might make a new collection.
Okay.
So in this window at the bottom here are a number of options, one of which says Add a Collection. So I'm going to click on Add a Collection.
Okay.
Now a new little dialog pops up. We can enter in a bunch of information. We can give it a name. Let's call this one Project 6.7. You can give it a description. We just say my new collection. You can add notes to it. I'm going to add in webinar.
And again, these are notes that you're adding to the collection, not to an individual image.
Exactly. This is to information about the collection itself. And then we just simply hit the create button. And now, as you can see in the list on the left, we now have a new collection which says Project 6.7. Let me zoom in on that a little bit. Maybe you can see it better. So in that collection right now, we don't have any images.
Okay.
Later on, we'll show you how you can upload images directly into a collection itself.
Okay.
But for now, let's just look at how we might move images from one collection to another.
Okay.
So to do that, I'm going to click on my work area here where I have some images. Now you can select these images either one at a time using a check mark under each one, or you can use the option down here which says Select All.
Okay.
I'm going to select them all and then hit the option that says Move to Collection. And once that happens, we pop up a new dialog which allows you to choose the collection you want. I'm going to choose it, and then I'm going to hit Move, and those images will be moved.
Now, Jeff, we're talking about really large files here, so when you say move, they're not actually being moved or copied inside the cloud, right?
Exactly. Those images were just moved in your collection. They're stored as associations within the database, so you're free to move them as you see fit. In fact, if you notice in the dialog that had popped up there, I had also an option to copy.
Right.
And I could have copied those images in.
Right, and what we want to avoid here is if you have a terabyte-sized file, making 5 copies of this on the server.
Exactly. So if you were to make a copy, you're actually not copying the underlying physical image data. You're just copying references to that data, and each of those can have independent information that we had seen with descriptions and notes and things like that.
Okay.
Okay, so if you're looking now, we'll click on that project again. These are the images that we just moved into that collection.
Jeff, the collection you just created, it doesn't have that many images in it. What if you were to add more images than you can see on this single screen?
Oh, that's a good question. Let me click back. If you look here, I can go back to All, and what that does is it's showing all the images I have view access to. At the top up here, we have a number of pages of images, and I can click on these, and what that will do is it will show the next page of thumbnails. So if you were to get a collection that had more than what you're currently viewing, it would basically just go to multiple pages of those images.
I see. Okay. So looking at this new collection you created, it doesn't seem like the order the images are listed in is terribly important since we can see all the images on one page. But in the example where you show that there are many pages of images in one collection, it may be useful for me to have certain images always pop up at the top. Is that something that you can change here? Can you change the order that you see the thumbnails?
Yeah, you definitely can. You can select any of the images you wanted. Here, I'll just grab all these. If you wanted to, there's an option that says Edit and Reorder. You can move down and you can just drag and drop images as you see fit, and you could even hit top, which would move that image to the first. And what that really allows you to do is reorganize those, as we said. So if you had some images that were later in your collection, you used them frequently, you wanted to open them up or be first in the collection, you could reorder them that way.
Okay, so this allows you to place the images that you use most at the start of a collection if you choose to. So if I make one of these reordering events, is that a change that other users of Biolucida Cloud will see as well?
Yeah, as soon as you make that change, anyone who's viewing your collection, as soon as they refresh whatever browser they're looking in, they will immediately see that change.
Okay, right.
But that really does, it brings up a good point, which regarding other users and access to your collections. So it's important to know what happens when you add a new collection with respect to what other users in the system will see.
Okay.
Now, by default, all the collections that you create are private. So you're the only one that has view rights to that collection. You'll see the collection. However, other users will not actually see it. They won't even know the name of the collection that it exists.
And what you're saying here, this is a very important point to many of our users, is that since I haven't been given access to that collection, I won't even know it exists. So when I create a new collection and upload images to it, I don't have to worry that this is now going to be publicly accessible to everyone. Right?
Exactly. Even the name of that collection, unless you give them rights to do it, they won't be able to see it at all.
Excellent.
Now, let's say, for example, with this, we wanted to give you view rights to see that collection. So let me just show you how you might do that.
Okay.
So to do that, you basically choose your collection. We'll use the new one that we just added. And down at the bottom, we're going to hit an option which says Edit this collection.
Okay.
Now, in Edit this collection, if you can read that, there's a lot of the exact same information we'd entered in earlier. So we have the project name, the description, my new collection, notes, and webinar. You can feel free to edit these at any time if you wanted to. But to add permissions, right down here at the bottom, we have a section that says permissions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to start typing in a username.
Okay.
And if you can see that, it auto-completes. So it knows that you're in the system, so it auto-completed your name.
Sure.
If you ever forget who's in the system, we have an option which will show all users, and these are the users we currently have in this demo system. So I entered in your name. We also have a role setting. So we have 3 roles that I can assign to you. We have view, download, and full. Now, view is just the ability to view images. So if I give you a view access, you'll be able to open images up, navigate around them, see them, but you're not going to actually be able to change anything with the images.
Okay.
One step further than that is download access. And now download access implies view access. So in addition to viewing, you can also download the complete image from the cloud to your local computer.
Sure.
And the final one is just full. And full permission basically says all the rights I have, you have. I'm still the owner of it, but you can edit the image, do as you see fit.
Cool. Okay.
So let's just go back to view, and we'll give you view access. Now, if you see here, it shows you as now having view access to it. And why don't we just show you quickly what that might look like? And I'm actually going to go to Firefox right now to demonstrate this.
Right, so just going to open a new, different browser, log as me to see if I can see that.
So right now we're in Firefox.
Okay.
Let me log in as you. We don't recommend sharing passwords like this. Okay, so now you have logged in. We're going to go to the Browse tag. And as you can see, those are the images we shared. If you click on the collections and look at the list, let me zoom in on this. The only collection that you see listed under my name here is that single project, 6.7, that we just added. I have a number of other collections. You don't see them. You don't even know they exist.
Right, and previously I had access to none of these collections, so now I can see just the one that you let me see, right?
Exactly. Now, one final field that I want to note on the permissions here.
Okay.
Let me go back to our Chrome browser. It's still open. We have an option here which says allow public access to this collection.
Okay.
If you were to click this and update it, what that does is it basically gives view rights to everybody who's currently in the system and everybody who ever will be in the system. So any new user that gets added, they'll automatically have view rights to that collection.
So that makes it so that anybody who is a Biolucida viewer can see the... so if you're in the system already and I put any images in this collection, then you'll be able to see it.
Exactly.
So this seems like a pretty good way to publish images. Can I create can I make it so that I can make a collection be completely public so that, for example, if I wanted to make a supplemental figure link, I can make a link to an entire collection?
It is. So by doing this, you're saying that this is going to be a public collection and any new user will be able to actually access it. So what we want is you'll be able to publish a link to an image or a collection. You could supply that as supplemental data to readers of your any reader of your paper,
Mm-hmm.
they can then download Biolucida Viewer and explore that image. We want researchers to easily be able to share links to specific regions of interest at whatever focal plane of magnification
Sure.
they'd like with any colleagues or readers of their papers.
So I guess to summarize, you can apply or give access in a number of ways. One is I can give access to any user of Biolucida,
Yep.
or I can create a system by which I can give completely public access to a
Exactly.
collection.
Exactly.
So I can imagine, okay, so I see how we share a collection with users off-site and on-site. So
Well, users that are in the system. So right now what we've done is basically shown, we're giving access to users that are in the system right now. So we basically, you have to be a user in the system to be able to view those collections. But let's say, for example, I have a colleague who's not in the system, and I want to allow them to look at a collection. I want to basically say, hey, take a look at these images.
Sure.
We have a feature for that too,
okay.
Which you can do it. Let me just go back here, and if you click on any collection that you'd like, we'll use the same one. We have an option to invite a guest.
Oh, I see.
And by doing that, we'll pop up a new dialog. You just need to enter in a unique username, their name, and their email address. And what this will do is it sends them an email with all the information they'll need to log in, and they'll have access to just that one collection.
I see. Okay.
And let me just point out this option here.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ability to either let them view that one collection or all your collections.
I see.
So by choosing one of those, other colleagues will now be actually invited into the system, and they have as the same rights as you do.
That's excellent, Jeff. So I think you've shown the users that they have quite a bit of control over their workspace, how it looks, and who has access to it. However, we haven't actually shown any information about individual images themselves. And Jeff, I remember you showing me that each image itself has quite a bit of information with it. Isn't that correct?
They do. Let's click on an image down here. And let's click on one of these and we'll look at some of the information. I'm going to zoom in a little bit so hopefully people can read this. So as you see, this is information that we're storing in a database for every image that's in the system.
Okay.
You have the name of the image. You have description and notes. And this is similar to what we had for collections earlier. That was, a description and notes of the collection.
This is for an image.
This is for this one image, and we have that for every image. We have the owner of the image, the lab that they belong to, the collection that image belongs to, the file name if you wanted to change the display name.
Mm-hmm.
We also have the file size that's stored on disk. This one happens to be 40 megabytes in size. We have the dimensions, which this is about 15,000 by 13,000 pixels, and it's not a stack, so there's only one focal plane.
Sure.
We store the objective for each image that the image was captured at. We talk about who had last modified this, so if you ever need to track changes that were made, you can do that easily.
Sure.
We keep a path on disk, and this is in the actual cloud itself. This tells you where the file is stored in case for some reason you ever really need physical access to that file.
That's not a path on your computer on your C drive. That's the path for where the image is at on the Biolucida Cloud.
Exactly. So you don't really have access to it, but that just gives you information that a network admin could use if you needed to for some reason.
Okay. Okay.
Now the last thing that we haven't talked about on this that I want to mention now is tags. And if you see here, we have a number of tags on this image, and tags are a really powerful feature that allows you to apply any description that you like to an image. So you can organize images not just by collections as we've shown, but you can also organize them by adding tags. So let's just add a tag onto this image to show you what it's like. I'm going to click on the edit option in the upper right hand corner here. And if you look at the bottom here, we have a number of tags that are already defined. I'm just going to go into the tag box and start typing. Mm-hmm. Now if you see, there's an autocomplete box that comes up.
Yeah.
And this is all of the current tags which are in the system that match what you've just started to type. So you can go through and choose any one of those options. You can choose one of those tags, or you can feel free to add in your own tag just by typing it and adding it in. Let's demonstrate here on this. Let's add GF. Even this has nothing to do with green fluorescent protein.
Right, there's no GFP.
Let's add it just for an example. So I add in GFP. You can see down at the bottom now we have a list that says a pending addition of tag. We hit update. And now back on that image at the bottom, you can now see we have GFP added. Now where the true power of tags comes in is not just in that you can tag your image, it's in that you can use them for searching. Mm-hmm. So let's go back to browsing. I'm going to look at all the current images I have access to. And let's enter in GFP and do a search. Now, as you see, we have a number of images that were already tagged.
Sure.
They're fluorescent, so it makes more sense that
Right.
we have the GFP
Right.
tag. And we have the new one that we just added it to.
Sure.
And this gives you the ability to really look through and add them easily.
Yeah, and this is phenomenal because, as we mentioned earlier, if you had to go back and re-audit, let's say, all the images that were captured by a previous coworker in the lab, you could easily pull out every image that was ever tagged with GFP just by doing one quick search, right?
Exactly. I mean, it's important to remember that you may have images that you captured 3 years ago, and sometimes trying to find out where exactly they're stored or what they were is really difficult. This gives instant access to anything based on tags, and you can make these tags anything they want. They can be people in your lab.
Sure.
As we've done here, we use GFP,
genotypes, phenotypes.
Specific regions of interest in images too.
And this searched through the collection that you selected here in the collection list, right?
Exactly. So I went back to all, which is why we're seeing all the images I have access to that are tagged with GFP. If I click back onto the lab that just had that one image,
there it is. Yeah.
As you see, that now you only see just that image.
Right.
Now, let's just remove that tag since it doesn't have any business being there.
Right.
Okay, so now you see we have a pending removal to remove the GFP tag, excuse me. I remove it. Let's go back to browse here.
Sure.
And just to show you, we'll go back.
Gone.
Now that image is no longer shown in all of our images.
Yeah, I think that, Jeff, when you took me through Biolucida Cloud for the first time, tags really stood out as one of the defining features of how you can categorize and quickly access images that you've taken in the past.
It's a really fast way to locate images. Let me open this. Here, all right, so we're back in the viewer here. Let's say we have a local image on this computer and we want to upload it to the cloud somehow.
Okay.
To open a local image, we can simply use this folder icon in the left, or we can just drag and drop an image. So I'll just drop this one that we have on our desktop.
Okay.
So now we're looking at an image. There are a couple different ways that we can upload that image. So at the top here we have an icon. If you remember earlier, the icon I showed you that was a download icon?
Yeah.
When you have a local image open, that icon is now an upload
It's
icon.
upload, right, that makes sense.
Yeah. So when I click on that icon, a dialog pops up. We can see a bunch of information, places basically where we can enter information.
Sure.
Let's go in and let's choose, the collection that it's going to go to. You can set that. You can enter in a description for this image, and you can enter in notes. You can change the objective that it was captured at, and also in here you can enter in tags.
So Jeff, what you had shown us previously was that you can edit this kind of information on images once they've already been uploaded to the Biolucida server. But what you're showing us now is that you can actually tag and categorize things as they get uploaded.
Yeah, exactly. You can, by doing this, you're gonna upload this image with all the information that it has. But this is just for one image. Let's say, for example, you had a number of images and you wanted to do them all at once. We also have a feature up in Tools, which I just want to show you, which is just called Uploads and Downloads. And this is, let's see if I can widen this. This is what we have called a batch upload. So we have two tabs here. One is called Transfers, one is Batch Upload. Batch Upload is simply you select the directory or images that you want, hit upload, they all get uploaded at once to the server.
So this is very useful for example, a lab who's just starting to use Biolucida Cloud. They may already have a large number of images on their local drive that they're going to want to upload. Instead of sitting here and uploading one at a time, I can batch upload a whole folder, go back to the bench, finish my PCR, come back, and hopefully they'll all be uploaded.
Exactly, and actually as they're uploading, you can go to the Transfers tab here, and this will list the status of all of your uploads and downloads, and you can cancel them if you need to as you see fit, or add new ones in.
Sure.
Now, I just mentioned two methods that for uploading to the server. There's one more that I just like to, we're not going to demonstrate it, but I just like to talk about it so you know it exists. And it's an additional method using something which we call track directories. Now you can set up a track directory in the cloud itself such that any image which gets added to that directory is automatically detected and added into the system.
I see.
Images can be added that way. Any method that you see fit, standard networking approaches. the images will be discovered in the directory and then automatically added in.
So essentially, you can either upload images using the two methods in Biolucida Viewer like you demonstrated, or users can use standard networking approaches to add images to track directories in the cloud itself.
Exactly.
Are there any differences between those two that are pertinent to users?
Basically two. I think
Okay.
there are two small differences you need to be aware of. If you're using track directories, we have something called a scanning interval, and that interval is user configurable, but it basically says every X minutes scan my directories and look for new images that are there. So what that means is if you say have an interval of 10 minutes, you add an image to a track directory, it's not going to be discovered until that next interval hits.
Sure.
And that's in comparison to using the viewer to upload images. When you upload through the viewer, those images are immediately found, and you only have to wait for the thumbnail to be generated, and they'll be in the system. That's one difference. The other small difference is when you upload images, if you remember the first method using the upload icon, we entered in a bunch of information,
right,
like notes, description,
sure,
collection, objective, all that.
Tags.
Using that method, you upload the image with all the information. However, using either the batch upload or track directories, you actually just automatically have images added to your work area. So at some point later, you need to go back in and actually edit those and move them to the collection you want.
Great. I think that makes a lot of sense.
But I will actually point out, if you're editing multiple images, we have the ability to edit multiple images at a time, so you can change groups of them at once.
Great. So even if you do have to batch upload a whole bunch of them, there are still tools to make the editing of them a little bit easier.
Exactly.
Thanks a lot, Jeff. That's a great overview of how we upload and manage images in Biolucida Cloud. So Biolucida Cloud is fully integrated with all MBF Bioscience software, including Stereo Investigator, Neurolucida, and Microlucida. There are also third-party software developer kits available for researchers that want to develop their own applications to interact with Biolucida. We're currently planning on supporting SDKs for MATLAB, C++, and Python, though this can be changed based on our customers' needs. For labs that are already using MATLAB for analysis, this means you can easily access Biolucida Cloud image data for processing. Those of you that have already worked with us before know that we take our customer support and our technical support very seriously, and Biolucida Cloud support is identical as it is for all other MBF Bioscience software. So the same level of professional support that you've come to expect from all of our products will of course be carried over to Biolucida Cloud. So that having been said, let's go back to a live screen to demonstrate the integration of Biolucida Cloud with Stereo Investigator, Jeff, and I think this is a really cool feature, so just please take us through it.
All right. So I already have a running instance here of Stereo Investigator. As we had mentioned, this is the same regardless of MBF software they're using. So if you're using Neurolucida, Stereo Investigator, what you're looking at, you're going to see exactly the same thing here. So I'm just going to go down to File. We have an option in here under File called Biolucida Server. I'm going to choose that. We have a large docking window that comes up now.
Okay.
I'm going to hit the Connect button. I have a dialog that pops up. It's already filled with my information because I've logged in before, so I'm just going to hit OK. And that automatically logs us into the system. Now what you see here is exactly what you've seen in the viewer and in Chrome and Firefox, everything we looked at. This is an embedded web browser. It's going to behave exactly the same. You have access in NLNSI to all of your collections. Everything you could do there, you can do here. Let's just click on an image here. When we click on this image, as you see, you get the same dialogues that come up in NLSI.
Yeah.
Let's click OK. Move around in this image. Let me zoom out a little bit. This image is actually, let me close this. There, I can get a better view. This image is actually 50,000 by 66,000 pixels in X and Y dimensions. So it's a large image. Let's zoom out a little bit and get a better view of it.
Well, I mean, this is phenomenal. Jeff, this was basically as if you opened this file directly from your local hard drive, except as you mentioned, this is a really, really large file. So with Biolucida Cloud integration, I can imagine a situation where one user captures this image, uploads it to Biolucida, and then I can just sit in front of Stereo Investigator and open it as if it were a local file.
Exactly. We're really trying to get the integration with NLSI to be as seamless as possible. You may have actually been in a situation before where you had a number of images associated with a data file.
Yeah.
And let's say you save the data file, you move the images somewhere else, you open the data file later, it tries to auto-load them and says,
it's looking
can't find
for
the
them.
images.
Yeah.
And if you don't remember where they are, it can be a pain to find them again.
Sure.
We really want to sort of make that problem go away with Biolucida Cloud, in that if you have a data file, you can open up as many images as you want from Biolucida. You save a data file. You can do your tracings, place markers,
sure.
everything you'd expect.
Sure.
Save your data file. The next time you open that data file up, if it's a Biolucida image, you'll be prompted to log in if you're not logged in, and it will just open up.
And if I wanted multiple users to do, let's say I wanted various users to do stereology on distinct regions of anatomy, if I don't, aside from using Biolucida Viewer to share the image from the Biolucida Cloud, then I would have to make copies of this image and put them on each of the workstations so that each user could work on it simultaneously.
Exactly. And you can have multiple users working on this at the same time.
Right, which I think is a very powerful aspect about the cloud-based image sharing.
Yep, and this integration it's the same in Neurolucida and Microlucida. Everything you can do, you'll see it here. And we're trying to make it seamless.
Excellent. We'd like to thank you all for coming and attending the webinar today. I'd like to give a special thank to all of our users who contributed images for this webinar, as well as to the National Institute of Mental Health for support. As we've mentioned below, please feel free to email questions to us at info@mbfbioscience.com or visit our website, mbfbioscience.com, and you can find us on several social media outlets as well. And that concludes our webinar on Biolucida Cloud. Jeff and I and everybody at MBF want to thank you for coming today. We hope to see everybody at the Society for Neuroscience meeting in Washington, D.C.
Thanks a lot, everybody. We really appreciate you taking your time to be here.
Have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.